Yeah.
All right.
I'm good.
Capcom is go.
Capcom is go. Oh, is that your nickname, Capcom?
No. I only just. Oh yeah. No. That's pretty funny, isn't it? Yeah. No. I just had moon landings on the brain, but.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it should be.
Okay, here we go. Now we're ready. Capcom is go.
Okay.
Dylan.
Better get on the radio.
Mac.
Sergeant!
Yes, sir.
I want a defensive position up on that ridge. Mine it with everything we've got. Put him in his poncho. Take him with us.
I got it.
Welcome to Predator Minute, the podcast that breaks down the 1987 action sci-fi classic Predator 1 minute at a time. I'm John Zabriskie.
And I am Jeff Glover.
And with us today, we have a fantastic guest. Of course, all of our guests are fantastic, but we're going to speak to the one and only Toby Capwell. And let me pull up your little deal here. The Curator of Arms and Armour at the Wallace Collection in London, one of the world's great art museums with a substantial collection of weapons and armor. Toby?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Wow.
My pleasure.
That's quite the resume, Toby. Very cool. How did you get into that line of work?
Well, it's a sort of a child's fascination that sort of got a bit out of control, really. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of jobs where people wanted to be them, wanted to do it when they were kids, firemen or police or teachers or
I did that with beer. It just got out of control.
So I guess I wanted to be a knight.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, and that led me into all sorts of places, but museums was one of them. And I'm also really interested in mythology and storytelling and traditional cultures and how the world today is still populated by human beings with ancient instincts and patterns of behavior, and even if we don't know it, we are still that same species that has existed for thousands of years. So I guess my interest in this movie kind of stems from that in part.
Yeah, that was going to be my second question, was your connection to Predator. Kind of when did you see it? What did it mean to you? If you could elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, I was born in 1972, so a lot of these great famous movies of the 1980s that are really enjoying a kind of a renaissance at the moment.
It's really great.
I mean they really deserve it, especially with the hindsight that allows us to look at them objectively, technically, artistically. I think a lot of their virtues weren't really recognized at the time, as is so often the case. But because of when I was, born and growing up in California and Seattle, I saw most of these films in the cinema when they first came out, when they were totally new, and there was no further culture. Or franchise or whatever surrounding them. It was just a film. It was just another film that Arnold had done. He was doing a film practically every year in the mid 1980s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And this was this summer's Arnold film.
Right.
So I saw Aliens when it first came out at the Northgate cinema at Northgate Mall.
I'm so jealous.
And I remember that one really clearly, actually, because I came out of the film completely exhausted, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and I should have known better, because I actually I remember seeing the trailer for that one. and I saw that at Northgate too. All these giant, these huge wraparound screens. There aren't that many of them out there anymore. And I remember watching the trailer to Aliens and thinking, I really shouldn't go to see that. That looks horrible. That looks horribly scary.
But you're so glad you did.
But I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
And similarly with Predator. I mean, Predator was a weird one because when it first started to get advertised, nobody really knew what it was.
Right.
And nobody knew what it involved. I mean, you knew Arnold was in it, so you know it's an action movie. It looks like he's an army guy. It's and he'd done Commando. What else had he done at that point?
The Terminator.
Raw Deal.
Raw Deal.
Right?
Yeah, the Terminator. Conan.
So there was a baseline of Arnold action films that this movie was going to get judged against. But I remember seeing it for the first time, and it's a movie that, as you've already no doubt been talking about, it's a series of continual surprises. I mean, you're getting surprised every sort of 5 minutes practically in this movie, and in lots of different ways, whether it's the Predator revealing himself or being revealed, in different ways, or whether it's the genre of the film changing suddenly and surprising you, or the feel of the film. That big the raid on the guerrilla camp is stylistically completely different than the rest of the film in many ways. And I think it was directed by somebody else, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was directed by Craig Baxley, who a year later directed Action Jackson. Carl Weathers.
Right.
And a lot of 18 episodes.
So I remember seeing it at the cinema and just being totally kind of in awe of the thing all the way through. And I remember it feeling a lot different than what I had expected going into it. And then, of course, later in the film, the surprises get ramped up pretty fast. But we're not quite there yet, are we?
No, not quite there yet. But it's totally fine to talk around here and there because that's what we do a lot on this podcast.
Yeah, all those things you mentioned, we have discussed. But I love that you bring it up: the genre shift and the slow reveal. We were talking just last episode about how we're on minute 50 now, and we still really haven't really seen the Predator. We've gotten his camo outline. We've seen his hand in the infrared vision. But that's a lot of restraint where it's taking a very long time to kind of get to this point in the movie where we see the title character really.
Yeah. And there was you got the eye flash a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's I think that's an important one that kind of,
I'm so jealous of you seeing all those movies in the theater when you were able to in the 80s. When all these movies came out, I was too young. And so I didn't discover them until I was a teenager in the 90s, watching them on cable, on TV.
Right.
And you're getting a watered down, edited version that's cropped to 4:3 aspect ratio, and it's really just been in the last 10 years or so where everything's been transitioned to Blu-ray. And you get full restorations of the original, 35 millimeter prints. And you get to, for my first time, I'm seeing all these movies of my childhood that I loved, but always just thought of them as, kind of these cable TV action movies. But I'm seeing them in all their glory, and they're gorgeous films, and there's a lot of artistic merit to them. And I just feel like we're in kind of a golden age of these restorations that are happening to all these older films. It's been really fun.
Yeah, they recently had a re-release of Predator on a few screens around the UK.
Oh man,
there was one near me. I was going to do everything I could to try and get there, but I just couldn't for various reasons, and I'm still annoyed about it. But I'm hoping it'll come around again. I'd love to see it on the big screen again. This film is shot so beautifully.
Yeah,
it's such a kind of immersive environmental experience. And you can just feel the suffering of the film crew in the jungle.
Right.
And you just think, they are going through this to create something. So at least I could give it a little more respect. I think you read some of the early reviews and people just didn't get it when it came out.
They totally missed the point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Well, a lot of art is like that. A lot of art is not takes a while for people to get their heads around it. And sometimes you need some hindsight. You need later work, later art to compare it to, and then it starts to make more sense.
Yeah, I think that it really benefits watching Predator with all the other 80s action movies in mind. It's all encapsulated essentially in one scene, and that's just a couple minutes ago where they are mowing down the jungle with all the weapons, including Old Painless, the minigun. And John McTiernan is saying in the commentary how he's doing all this to, one, pretend like he's pleasing the action movie fans and Fox executives, and two, really underscoring everything by trying to take the piss out of all that adrenaline and testosterone by making the team not hit anything. We hit nothing.
Right. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. But he does that in different ways in the film too, doesn't he? I mean, the main characters themselves are like action stars that have been or action hero characters that have been transported into a different movie.
And where the hell was I?
Where their powers don't work, you know?
And they unexpectedly die quickly, you know?
I mean, I think Dutch is in a lot of ways a better character than Arnold's role in Commando. But of course, in the dress, what they look like, they're almost identical.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, it's the same character, basically. And you could, I did rewatch Commando recently, and I tried to watch it as if it's about Dutch, like this is an earlier story or a later story, something. This is the same character, you know. It breaks down because Bill Duke's in the movie as well.
I eat green berets for breakfast.
And that sort of.
Then he kills Bill Duke.
Yeah, right. But it's like they come from different movies, and they've ended up in this jungle where they're helpless and they're kind of screwed, and you can just see the terror. I mean, this has got to be one of Arnold's best ever roles, as far as I'm concerned.
I've said that
as an actor,
again.
As a proper actor, this is the one where he really nailed it. And because you can feel that he's the pressure, that he's terrified. He's got the leadership role to take care of these people, to get the mission done, to make sure his people, get out alive. And he can see that he's doomed, basically, or but he doesn't overdo it. None of the actors in this overdo it, and you can really see it in this minute. In 51, they're looking down at Blaine. And Dylan and Duke and Dutch, they're all totally freaked out. They're on the verge of absolute panic because they all have a wide combat experience. They've seen people get killed before, but there's nothing in their experience that explains what's lying on the ground in front of them.
That's true.
But none of them are freaking out. None of them do panic acting. None of them do any sort of freak out. It's all behind the eyes, and it's all quite subtle, and they become very, just very quiet, and it's terrifying to see characters like that, completely stripped of their machismo and their mojo.
Right. It's one of the more fun parts of this film is watching all these macho characters kind of meet their maker, and it's not even hard. It's not even hard for the Predator, except for Arnold. But that's a nice segue, I think. John,
Yeah.
Should we kind of fire up the minute here?
Yeah, and I'll probably give like a couple sports names. I'm not gonna overdo it like I sometimes do. But this is minute 51 of Predator. Minute 51 opens with Dutch looking toward the destroyed forest and ends with the team preparing for a radio call. Number 51. I always like to talk about my sports figures, and being from Seattle, I couldn't help but think of two of the biggest number 51s in baseball history, Randy Johnson, the big unit, and Ichiro Suzuki, longtime right fielder in Mariners and Yankees and other teams' histories.
Heading for third is Terrence Long. The throw by Ichiro, beautiful, Peggy, get him!
Some good Mariners players.
Yeah. Woo! Some good Mariners players.
Randy Johnson with not only a porn stash, but a porn nickname called the Big Unit. You really embraced it.
Oh, he should be in this film.
Do you remember that clip when Randy Johnson hit the bird with his pitch?
I do. Kill that bird.
Love
Kill
that.
it dead.
Unbelievable.
But let's jump into our first part of what's happened in the minute. Jeff, if you will, take over with the summarizing.
Sure. So this minute kind of breaks down into two parts. So carrying over from the last minute, we've got Dutch kind of looking towards the jungle after Pancho tells him that they hit nothing.
Nothing.
Dutch stands, still looking away from Dylan, Pancho, and Mac.
Mac.
And tells Dylan and Mac, ooh, should I save this for a dramatic line reading? Or
Let's do a dramatic line reading. Yeah, so if you want to do Arnold Still Jeff, feel free. And Toby, if you want to take over on Mac's lines there.
John, you don't have lines, so
It's fine with me. I'm Panchito in the distance.
right, okay. All right, here's our quick conversation. Dylan. Better get on the radio. Mac. Sergeant!
Yes, sir.
I want a defensive position up on that ridge. Mine it with everything we've got. Put him in his poncho. Take him with us.
I got it.
And see.
And see. Way to go, guys.
All
Way
right.
to go.
Right.
Throwing you right into dramatic line readings.
I love that Mac. That Mac
I jumped in
probably
too
get
soon
here.
there.
Mac.
Oh, no, it's okay. I'll edit to the right place. Don't worry.
You're good.
Oh, excellent. Good.
Make it sound like a pro.
Mac.
Yeah.
Mac.
Oh, yes, sir.
He says it so quick and quietly.
Yeah.
All right, John. So what are we seeing in this segment here?
Well, it's a good little oneer here from 19 to 34 seconds. I really like the blocking they're doing and the line reading. The only line you're hearing after the oneer begins is Bill Duke looking down at Blaine saying, I got him. And just extending that idea that these two had a friendship, had a closeness, a camaraderie to the point where Mac is going to look after his dead his dead buddy's body. That's really showing that bond right there. Just in a minimal way, without him having to say like, he's my friend, I'm going to do this for him. It's just
He just does it.
straightforward. Yeah, 3 words. I got him. And then
Yeah.
everybody kind of looks at him, looks at each other, and continues on their way.
And they kind of back out of the frame and kind of let him have his moment and, let him to kind of take care of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That is a nice little kind of oneer there, though. A good 10, 11 seconds there. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that how this film handles that bigger backstory all the way through, though?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's remarkably, just graceful and effortless in the way it hints that these people have a history, and it gets a kind of a very detailed backstory in there without ever really saying anything about it.
Yeah, and we've compared the dialogue in the film to what the original kind of working script had several years prior, and they definitely went with less is more, because there is so much dialogue that they took out and just kind of left things up to the imaginations, or left the audience the ability to kind of infer what happened in the past, and to great effect. It was a very smart choice.
It's so easy to overstate, especially when you're sitting there writing it, to just overstate and write everything down. But it doesn't tend to work, does it?
No, and I totally agree with that less is more angle. Like some of the films you're talking about, Aliens, I would throw Star Wars in there too, the original, just by cutting so much and letting the visuals actually tell the story like they're supposed to do in a motion picture. You're giving the audience a lot of credit, and honestly, it's more fun to watch on repeated viewings and being able to take out little pieces that you think are there that might not be there, but they're at least open for analyzing and breaking down like we're doing.
Yeah, and that must be proportional to the rewatchability of the movie. I mean, a movie that explains everything and just says everything and shows everything, they don't tend to be rewatchable, do they? But
True.
No.
I mean, this one you could keep. I mean, I tried to watch minute 51 yesterday in advance of this, and I couldn't stop it.
You just
I had
kept
to
going,
keep
didn't you?
going.
Yeah.
And I'd watch 20 minutes into
so many
it,
times.
and you know, how many movies are going to do that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same thing where I have to say to myself, what happens next minute? I just need to double check. Then I click on the individual clips. I give up and just load the whole file and watch the rest of the movie. And I feel bad every time. I feel so sad for the characters every single time. But to jump back into something we talked about many minutes ago, they reference their enemies without seeing them when Hawkins is killed as sappers.
Oh, yeah.
And sapper, as we talked about in that previous minute, many minutes ago, a sapper was the military, whatever. It still has a place in the military, its own unit of soldier who will go in and either disarm demolition or set up traps or
do some of the grunt work.
Yeah, do some of that grunt work or set up demolition. And I saw that in my research many minutes ago that had some medieval roots as well, where sapping meant you would dig under the walls of a castle and make the castle walls fall. And Toby, I was wondering if you had any backstory for sappers of medieval times.
Yeah. Essentially, it's siege work, and as you say, they have to take down fortifications. A lot of that is digging. They have to they dig tunnels under the walls, and then as the tunnel is going directly under the castle wall, they'll start to set up wooden supports to keep it from collapsing. And then when they're ready, they'll set a fire and they burn the supports, and that collapses the wall when they need it to. And that kind of undermine that's undermining. That's where the term undermining comes from.
Oh my
They're
god!
literally undermining the walls of a fortification, and that's a big part of the job. But then as soon as explosives become a serious thing, it's a natural new technology for sappers to become involved with. So you're actually planting explosives and blowing the walls up, and that's the modern derivation of modern sappers who are explosive experts and demolition and so forth. They don't blow up historical buildings much anymore, although it does happen in the Middle East, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the role that Mac kind of has in the film has an ancient pedigree, as a lot of this does, actually.
Once again, I would be a terrible medieval sapper.
Oh man, it's got to be a bad job. I mean, the tunneling in the First World War.
I would get tired. I'd pass out. I'd not do my job all the way, and then when the wall didn't collapse, everyone would turn and look at me.
Oh, it's. I mean, you got to have a certain mindset to do that job. There's a surviving tunnel at a castle in Scotland that I went to a couple of years ago, and you can still go through it. And I thought, yeah, that'll be fun. And I went down there, and when you actually get into the tunnel seriously, it's very, very low.
Oh no!
And
no!
Much, much more off-putting than you would realize. And my brain just said, no, not doing it.
Yeah.
And
Oh god!
and no power on earth would have gotten me down there.
Like where you have to breathe out to fit in some places, because that always
exactly.
Oh my god!
Exactly.
No,
thanks.
Oh my
how to make a war even worse than it already is.
Oh my god! I have some claustrophobia, and so even just thinking about that gives me anxiety. That sounds terrible.
But I don't. I'm not claustrophobic normally in any way.
Yeah, and it still was off-putting.
Geez, no, don't want to go there.
Yeah. I think that's just like instinctual at a certain level, where your human instinct, your survival instinct just says, no, this isn't about like irrational fear. This is a rational fear.
Right.
Just don't go in there. Don't go in there, like the person in the movie shouting at the screen. Don't go in there. Like, I hear you. I will not go in there.
Don't run upstairs. Run out the front door.
Right.
All right. Awesome, Toby. Thank you. Do we have other tidbits for the first half of this minute, John, that you wanted to address?
I believe this is the last of the battle damage you'll see on Blaine. I posted. I believe I posted a picture on Facebook listeners group, the Predator Minute listeners pull-up. I don't know. I'll make sure to post it again if I haven't yet. But you see that chest cavity just burst open, which for the first time ever, I don't know why I didn't make this connection before. For the first time ever, you have like this clear visual connection to an aforementioned movie, Alien, and Aliens with like the chest bursting. I'm not really sure how I didn't see that before, but I have to think that this is a Fox production. They're cribbing from their own work to, hey, remember like the aliens that pop out of your chest? Hey, guess what? Here's another alien who pops a chest in a different way with a plasma weapon.
Yeah, nice. I didn't think of that either. That's a good parallel.
It seems like the Predator can dial up or down the power of that blaster that he's got.
Yes,
because he shoots other people and it has different effects later on. This is about as he's got this turned up to 11, I think, in this one.
It's like
the first time. It's the first time he uses it, right? It's the first time we see it.
Yeah, it's the first time we use it.
It's like he held down the L button on his controller to charge it, and then fired with the R button.
He set it to professional wrestler level.
Right.
I ain't got time to bleed.
You're gonna need all the juice.
But what? That's a different minute. But I've always wondered. He gets hit first before he gets shot with that as well. I never quite understood what was happening.
Yeah, we talked about that in a previous minute. That was the first weapon that the movie makers came up with, because in the script it just says the weapon. There's no description of what's hitting him, so you're just really left to wonder reading the script, and so are the filmmakers. So at first they thought, well, let's just give him like a harpoon gun or something like that, and that's what will graze him. And then if you notice, when Blaine is hit, it's not a one shot. It's the plasma cannon is coming from behind him, and then it zooms into his face with his chest cavity bursting open. Because they had all that filmed, and they added in later the plasma cannon when they decided that's what his main weapon was going to be, when they had to do the whole costume and monster redesign.
Yeah, when you slow that scene down real, like frame by frame, you can see the spear-like weapon fly through the frame very quickly. Yeah, so because we had that exact same question, and so we had to break it down to figure it out.
That's okay, because they've got stuff like that in Predator 2, don't they? They've got
and Predator 2 doesn't he have that like circular like blade weapon?
Oh, the buzzsaw.
The what was it called?
Oh, I don't know what it's called, but it's like the Busey Killer.
Yes, the Busey Killer. That's what it should be called. R.I.P. Gary Busey.
R.I.P.
In like 15 or 16 seconds in that second shot, have you guys noticed this? This is something I was wondering about. I wanted you to think about this. This is a very unusual upward angle that they're shooting at here
for the conversation.
It's almost like, when Arnold's looking off into the distance and Max looking down and Dylan is wondering what everybody's going to do. It's like the viewer is Blaine. Yeah. It's almost like a Blaine perspective, and you're looking up at the people who have survived so far, and now it's like the story is going to go on without you.
That's brutal.
I mean, it's not exactly Blaine, because Blaine's a little farther over into the frame, but this is essentially Blaine's viewpoint post-death. You're right.
That whole scene takes place like they're shooting down at knee level.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, and you're right, and it also gives Arnold like this very towering presence in the scene. He looks much taller just from forced perspective than everybody else. Wow, that's interesting.
And that's a heroic angle, isn't it? I mean, they do that to Sigourney Weaver in Alien. There's a couple of places where you see her from that kind of angle, and it emphasizes that she's becoming the central player in a film where that hasn't been obvious up to a certain point. I mean, we always knew Arnold was the hero, but yeah, it does. It's a really, really striking shot, I think.
Yeah.
Good catch. Yeah, this is, in my opinion, this is McTiernan's best film. It's my favorite one. People cite Die Hard a lot, but I just like what we talked about before with the minimalism, but a variety of camera angles, and he employs the rack focus, which is my favorite camera technique. Rack. I notice it all the time, and whatever movie or show I'm watching, I'll notice the rack focus. Even like in kids shows, they'll do it like a little rack focus. But it's employed to great effect here, especially later on with Arnold's eye acting and the Predator blood and the one-on-one scenes. But this is another example of an impressive camera technique, which, like you're saying, Toby, is possibly meant to evoke this reaction that we are Blaine as the audience, and our team is shocked by our demise. Our team is hopefully going to gain some degree of revenge on the attacker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it just emphasizes the consequence. I mean, this is one of the ways this film really diverges from other action films of the period. You know, action films don't tend to dwell on consequences of action. They have the action and they move on, and once that person's dead, they're forgotten. But this movie has a lot of consequence in it comparatively, and this shot is kind of like that. It's dwelling on Blaine after he's been killed and making you feel the implications of that.
Yeah, we're all out of one-liners. We're all out of quips and jokes since I guess the last one-liner was probably Dutch saying "knock knock."
Right.
Knock, knock.
Right.
You know, in the guerrilla camp raid. Since then, it's been by and large a very serious and grim film.
Yeah.
As their team is being whittled down.
We are on to the second half of the minute here. We've just got a little vignette of Anna reaches out to a leaf that is aglow.
Hang on, Jeff, can I interrupt you real quick? In all of our minutes recording, I have noticed you saying Anna like together like that is a double name.
All the time. You know what it is? My wife's name is Anna.
Oh.
So...
And in the movie, her name is Anna, but it's like, might as well just call her. But I appreciate that, and please keep it up.
It's instinctually, when I see that name written, that's how I pronounce it. And then I have to catch myself, be like, nope, it's Anna, not my wife, Anna. All right, start over.
Anyway.
All right, so that brings us to the second part of the minute here. We get a little vignette of Anna, who reaches out to a leaf that is aglow with green slime, which is, of course, the predator's blood we learned in the previous couple minutes. Dylan appears behind her. He says,
Dylan!
Says, Vamonos. Anna rubs some slime on her pants. She follows Dylan, and we end the minute as the camera kind of descends on Billy, who is guarding Poncho and Dylan as they set up Hawkins Field radio. So the main thing to take away from here is the blood, right? Our glowing green blood.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, what do we have to say about this?
Well, this is a mix of KY jelly and that liquid that comes out of glow sticks. Just so you know.
So you're my Friday night.
Oh, good stuff.
That was an easy one. Just lobbed that up there.
That was, the old Kentucky jelly blood rub. We all know how that goes. I have to say, it looks a lot like there's some After Effect glow work done here too, and I don't know that anything's going to make that bright of an impact. That's not like light based on a camera. So I'm curious to see. Maybe I can find out later if they use some sort of After Effect to make it glow. They turn the brightness or the contrast up.
It is kind of sparkly.
Yeah, I mean,
very sparkly.
Yeah. I would say it might be like a bright light right off camera, but I feel like you would notice that on everything else in the scene, but you don't. It is very glowy. Yeah.
Probably just wouldn't show up in the daylight, would it? I mean, later on when you see it in the dark, it comes out much clearer in camera, but they must have had to do something to it because it has a kind of weird shimmer to it when you see it like running down the leaves and stuff.
It does, yeah. So we are to assume, John, that this is the blood from the predator, the Yauta blood, as it's called.
Yeah, Yauta is Yauta is the canonical name for the predator species. And from the website Xenopedia, which is the Predator and Alien mashup encyclopedia, kind of like Wikipedia is the encyclopedia for Star Wars, or I forget the one for Indiana Jones, is Indypedia or Jonesopedia.
Jones!
But it goes on to talk about Yautja blood being neon green bioluminescent substance that originates from Yautja. It has been known to be warm when spilt, implying the Yautja are warm-blooded creatures. However, this could be due to the thermal netting warming the Yautja's body and therefore its blood. There wasn't a whole lot else to add on to there. Nothing really interesting from Xenopedia, but the fact that it has a unique blood, again, made another connection for me in my mind to the Aliens franchise, how the xenomorphs have acidic blood that makes them one more step harder to fight. So did you guys have any examples specifically of different bloods in movies or stories?
There's Mr. Spock. He's got green blood, doesn't he?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Star Trek, 1960s. That's got to be an early sci-fi blood example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Explained by, I think, I'm not actually hugely literate in Star Trek, but I think it was explained that Mr. Spock's blood is copper-based rather than iron-based, explaining why it's green.
Well, if your blood were red instead of green, you wouldn't have an upset stomach.
And I think Captain Kirk hits him in the head with a lead pipe in an episode, and you can see the green blood quite well.
It's great. It's a game of Clue on Star Trek.
That was television, man. I think he explodes with a line of racially offensive epithets before he hits him with the pipe as well.
Oh, 1960s.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
I can't think of any other interesting blood splatters. John, can you?
I don't know. Are there any horror movies, Jeff? Because I know you're the horror hound. Where
all the horror movies
the blood
is
maybe
usually like
black or weird.
Well, I will say that Dawn of the Dead, the sequel to Night of the Living Dead in the late 70s from George A. Romero, featured zombies who, the way that film was filmed, the color scheme they used and the lenses they used, the blood ended up looking almost bluish. It's one of the things that people talk about in that movie is that like the zombies look like they have bluish, reddish blood. It does not look natural. And it's very goopy, like syrupy. And there's so many gore effects in that movie that you see it all the time. So that's one I can think of, I suppose. But most horror movies, it's like they relish that red blood splatter, so you get that bright red usually.
Yeah, one of the color schemes of this movie we've talked about is the green and the red. A lot of jungle, a lot of camo for the green. The Predator's own outfit has some green in it. And then the Predator's blood is green. And then you talk about the red. Well, the red is all the guts and the blood of the team and some of the blood of the gorilla.
And the light inside the helicopter.
Yeah, and the light inside the helicopter. Excellent.
Not to be too pedantic about this, but if I'm gonna be, this seems like the place to do it.
Yeah, might as well.
Yes, please.
Doesn't a predator have two different kinds of blood? I mean, I ask this because you got the green stuff now, and that's the famous blood. But like if you look at the predator's mouth, his gums are pink, and he's got red colored blood vessels on the inside of his mouth and so forth. And in the original script, which you kindly provided in advance of the recording here, when they're describing the fight, the climactic fight, I think they describe most of the blood as orange at that point.
Yes, orange.
But then he when the predator gets killed at the end, they also describe green slime as well as the orange slime, I think. I don't know if that's ever been brought up, but I've always been worried about the blood vessels in the mouth. I mean, shouldn't it be green?
Question. Right, it should be.
Shouldn't he have luminescent gums?
Like light, sort of luminescent gums, light green luminescent gums. Yeah. You're right. I just realized I made a mistake. Right when you said the word orange, I realized that the blood in Dawn from the Dead actually looks orangish, not bluish. So sorry out there to all the horror people. I just wanted to correct myself.
They already turned off.
I know.
Stuff, Jeff.
Yeah,
right there.
I've already. My inbox is full. God damn it.
And that inbox is once again his personal email. No, we're not going to throw that in there. But
thank you. You can send all your complaints to predatorminute@gmail.com.
Wouldn't that be interesting, though, as sort of an alien physiology, that they have two completely different circulatory systems?
That would be something. I don't know what
it means, what it gets you, but it seems like that's what's going on here.
It does.
Yeah, you want to make a really weird alien, give it two different kinds of blood. I like that. Yeah, maybe like one for, like you said, circulatory, one for the waist.
There you go.
I don't know why that's the first one that came to mind, but I don't know. Because I teach middle school, that's why. There you go.
All right, so we're getting close to the end here. What else? Did we have anything else to add, John, to this sequence?
The second part here is she's finding the blood right before she touches her hand to it, and then it's interrupted by Dylan. And we have a little musical drop, and I'll drop it here in the episode, that is the same musical drop that was played when Billy found the skin bodies of Hopper and friends. There's this kind of looking into the void kind of wall of sound music. It's really hard for me to describe, and I don't know what instrument they're using. To make it possibly just like a synthesizer, but it's just kind of this wall of sound, this kind of sound right before she touches it. And like I said, Billy is about to find the skin bodies. You hear that sound when Billy and Dutch are looking into the jungle. Before Billy says, "I guess it's nothing major," you hear that same sound as the camera is zooming into the jungle. And I take this to be one of the Predator's motifs. The Predator doesn't have a lot of motifs, but he does have the drums. He does have this kind of sound. I think he has a little bit of the high strings, suspenseful sounds that we've heard throughout. But it's a neat little touch they add. And of course, it just cuts right off as soon as Dylan is behind Anna, giving like a really echoey reading of Vamonos. Like
it is echoey. It's kind of strange.
Vamonos.
Like almost like it's ADR, really, but I can't tell.
Yeah.
Vamonos.
Yeah.
And she wipes that blood on her shorts, which will come up into conversation later. But the camera kind of lingers on her shorts, like it's going to be this real big plot point later.
I feel like though you don't see it on her shorts here.
No, but you see her. You see her wipe. You see her.
Yeah, you very clearly see her wipe, and you do see it at night, like Toby said earlier. But you don't see it in. Right, this is the place where we pause it over and over again. I don't see any kind of glowing on her pants.
I don't either.
There, so it's interesting that it's glowing on the leaf and not on her pants. But that's the magic of KY, I guess.
It is
KY magic.
Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Toby, do you have anything to add for this? What we're seeing on the screen before we kind of dive into a little bit of medieval analysis?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I like the use of the blood, kind of to drive the story and to inject an element where, for a while, part of the problem for them with this situation is they know absolutely nothing about what they're dealing with.
Nothing.
It's completely out of their experience. But, the blood is the first inkling that, they're getting some kind of information. It takes them a little while to figure out what it means or what it can tell them. But it's like literally that drip, drip, drip of information about the Predator that they're getting and that we're getting at the same time. I mean, we've gotten little bits of information about the Predator that the characters don't have, but not a lot. So seeing the blood is important for us as much as it is for them.
Well, they're not even seeing it yet. It's just Anna, because they don't learn about the glow blood until much, much later.
Yeah. They have to work it out, and the only reason they're able to work it out and make some use of that information is because she wipes it on her trousers. If she hadn't done that, they wouldn't have been thinking about it later. She might not have brought it up again. But she's staring at it later, and she can work out that's it. They don't even know it is. She doesn't even know it is blood at first, does she?
I don't think so. She might have the idea later, or maybe she just has to process it for however long it takes for her to reveal it in English later on in the movie. Arnold convinces her to start speaking English. Just speak English.
And one of the reasons it's, that the blood is warm too is that if you mix the glow stick stuff with KY jelly, if you heat it up, the glow lasts longer. And obviously the lasting longer is important for the shot before having to mix up more. So they did, as far as I understand it, they did actually heat the stuff up to make it glow better.
Sorry, which part?
Pump more energy in there.
Which part are we talking about heating up to make it last longer?
So many jokes swimming around.
Glow stick?
I can't pick just one.
I think both. They're just rubbing it on that leaf. Keep rubbing it.
Heat it up.
I think the only way we're going to find out is if one of us does this concoction at home. Someone has to make some KY and some.
We'll post the video.
We'll rub it on some leaves really vigorously.
Real vigorously.
Okay. Since we have this very special guest, Toby Capwell from the Wallace collection with a wide range of armor and weapons, I had to think of, or I immediately started thinking about knights and the characteristics that knights are usually known for. And I was starting to put Dutch on kind of that knight pedestal, thinking of the different qualities that a knight has that Dutch also has, thinking about things like courage, his aptitude with a variety of weapons, leadership, chivalry, because later on he's treating Anna like a real person, a little bit later in the movie. But he has a high sense of honor and a strong devotion to protecting his fellow soldiers, of being part of a military unit. And Toby, I was wondering if you'd want to speak a little bit about that, about Dutch's knighthood.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned that. I realized that I never really thought too much about that. I mean, I like to think about this film as a myth, as an ancient human story that in this case is being retold in modern terms, but it's got a lot of really ancient campfire storytelling aspects in it. And I guess I had gone too far back for that to occur to me, but of course you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm very interested in the connection or relationship of this film to the story of Beowulf. Which is really, you could call it early medieval. But it's the Anglo-Saxon Viking period. The Beowulf poem was written in the 9th or 10th century, or maybe very early 11th century. But this story is essentially a version of Beowulf in many ways. You've got this giant man-like, troll-like monster that is, decimating trained warriors. Who are initially, at least, kind of helpless and don't know what to do to oppose it. But Beowulf, is part of a heroic warrior culture that goes back a long way. That from the 11th and 12th century does develop into medieval chivalry as we know it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Dutch is a kind of modern knight, and indeed, the special forces soldier is an analog for a knight. A knight was the special forces elite soldier of the Middle Ages. These are people who have a higher level of combat and martial arts training than average soldiers. They have access to better weapons, better training, better equipment. They have the elevated social status, but they also at least are supposed to act and apply their force, their power, according to some kind of moral framework, some kind of system of values that mediates the use of force. And so Dutch, he's a great example of one aspect of knighthood, someone who has a strong moral compass, and extremely refined skills and physique and mental training as well as physical training. Again, this is why I think this is one of Arnold's absolutely best moments as a proper actor. He brings the warrior spirit very much to the fore. A warrior is a proper warrior is someone who keeps his cool, who can look at things clearly, who doesn't panic. They have a certain detachment, and I think he cares. He has feelings, but they don't rule him. And he keeps it together, and he commands in subtler ways. He doesn't just shout at people and order people around. I mean, there are lots of great examples in the film where he uses subtler methods to get people to do what he needs them to do. Mm-hmm. So all of that is great. But I mean, I'd extend that idea to everybody, to the whole team. I mean, they're all aspects of knighthood or of the knightly identity. And actually, I think you've got the kind of social complexity of chivalry in this group as well, because knights need support. They need backup. They need people who are assisting them. They need the esquires and the pages and the horse attendants and all the people who back up what they do. And the characters like Hawkins and Poncho strike me as esquires.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Esquires, or squires, esquires. They're the assistants to the knights, but they are also warriors in their own right. They also have to fight in battle, and they are very often future knights. They will attain that status later on. So Hawkins might be, almost like a knight in training, because he's a weird character. Hawkins is like, he's not as well developed as the other characters, and you're never really clear why he's there or what makes him special.
He's the jester,
right?
He's
Yeah. But it's like you're not clear about what his abilities are that makes him so special as to deserve to be in this
He's
group.
the radio guy. He's communications.
Right. Yeah.
He's the radio
techie.
man.
He's the techie, right?
He's the he's the techie with the pussy jokes.
But he also seems younger. Some of these guys seem old enough to have served in Vietnam, right? And the implication is that they were in Vietnam. But Hawkins doesn't seem old enough for that. And also Poncho. There are some squires who never attained knighthood, who stayed at that level of status their whole lives because they didn't have the means to take up knighthood, or they didn't want to assume the financial, political, social responsibilities that knighthood brings. So Poncho is like the lifer squire almost.
We hit nothing.
But then like characters like Blaine and Billy. I mean, they are extraordinary expressions of certain aspects of the warrior identity or the knightly archetype. There's that, with Billy, you got this connection with the natural world and this incredible power of observation and sensitivity to what's going on around him.
There's something in those trees.
And Blaine is like the embodiment of the prideful prowess. He's beyond proud.
Goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus.
He's the worshiper of himself.
I ain't got time to bleed.
And if he worships himself, everybody else should as well. But those are aspects of knighthood. I mean, chivalric culture, the literature of courtly romance and all of that, there is this aspect of self-reverence and the celebration of individual prowess. But that's also a failing. That's also one of the dangers that the true warrior has to deal with. You can't get too self-involved, because then you might care if you get killed or get put in danger, and warriors can't be concerned with that.
Wow, thank you, Toby. That was very cool.
Yeah, this is the point of this film. I mean, again, people didn't get it at the time.
Yeah, I've never heard Predator talked about that way.
You can, but you can.
Really awesome. Yeah,
and I think that just shows the quality of the film. I mean, part of it's in the writing, but part of it is very much introduced as they developed it while they were filming it. But yeah, it just part of it is undoubtedly consciously intentional. But I think there's a lot of levels to this that occur subconsciously when people are making a film like this. They might not always know what they're doing it, but they still are.
Yeah, they're even encountering a dragon in this movie. At first without knowing it, and then later on trying to catch it, which when you think about it like that, it's just a ridiculous ploy. Like, hey, we have to catch the dragon. Like, no, you just need to kill it. There's no catching necessary. You just need to open up with your firepower or whatever weapons you can lay hands on.
And the Predator too is a knight.
That's a good point.
I mean, because a hugely important part of a knight's life was hunting. And in the 14th century, there's a very famous hunting book written by a French knight named Gaston Phoebus. And he says that hunting is the preeminent training for war. He says if you want to get ready for war, the danger, the injury and death, the use of weapons, hunting is the best preparation. Better than tournaments or jousts or anything. And, I think later as the character of the Predator develops in subsequent films and in comics and so forth, different writers get confused about whether the Predator is a hunter or whether he's a warrior, and what is the relationship and the whole the whole system of values that the Predators seem to abide by. It's very inconsistent, but I think for this film, it's important that, the hunted and the hunter kind of reflect each other and are, different sides of the same thing.
Yeah, and Jeff loves to call out the Predator in this movie because even though he comes from a race of honorable warriors and hunters, he totally camps. He's a camper, let's be honest. He shoots people from behind trees. He's totally invisible. He could kill everybody if he really wanted to, but then his own downfall, like you mentioned before, is this arrogance, this worship of self. I think that's a really interesting way you could put a lens on the Predator's psyche.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Good talk, you guys. John, are we ready to wrap things up here? Or some quick weekly recommends?
Toby, every week we recommends about a movie or a song or a book or some cool shoes or whatnot that you would recommend, something that you've been sitting on a while or something you experienced recently.
Yeah, I mean, as far as learning more about historical weapons and so forth, there's a YouTube channel I would highly recommend called Todd's Workshop. Todd's a friend of mine here in the UK who does a lot of work in film and television. He's also a fabulous craftsman and working a lot of different materials, but he specializes in edged weapons and crossbows particularly. And he's constantly posting little videos about historical weaponry and the realities of using them. What works, what doesn't, why do people do this and not that? What are the myths, common mythology or misunderstandings about stuff like this, and how can we explore them? It's a really great channel for introducing yourself to traditional weapons and the realities of them, because there's a lot of bad information out there that's hard to make your way through if you don't already have quite a lot of knowledge. So definitely check that out. I pop up on there now and again, but mainly it's just Todd shooting at something, or and it's just great. It's just a great channel. So and actually, learning more about historical weapons, I found really helps to kind of explore characters in films like this, and especially the Predator, who, despite the fact that he has some pretty advanced technology, he still favors his old sharp implements.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of weapons, I guess I have to ask, what is your favorite weapon?
For what?
Well, I mean, let's just start where you're working at the Wallace collection.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like my favorite as an object rather than for practical use?
Yeah, let's go there. I mean, we're talking, I would say old painless, but that's kind of a modern thing. But if we're talking like medieval weaponry, do you have like a favorite that sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, the Wallace is a fairly small collection, as great international collections of arms and armor go, but it has many quite famous individual objects that are fabulously interesting for lots of reasons. Right now, I mean, and my favorite objects change day by day, just about, depending on what I happen to be working on at a particular moment. But right now, I've been pondering the European versus non-European aspects of the collection, because it's a Victorian collection that was formed in the 19th century. It's always been divided into the European and so-called Oriental armories. And Oriental in a Victorian sense basically means anybody who's not white and Western European. Right. And so Oriental means basically the whole rest of the world. And but when you divide the collection like that, you lose a lot, and there's fascinating interplays and crossovers that really enrich your understanding of the collection. And right now I'm looking at this fantastic Italian Renaissance sword that was assembled about 1540, something like that, in Italy. But the blade is a much earlier Ottoman Turkish blade. That might even date from like the 15th century, which is, in this context, pretty early. I mean, by comparison, we have a lot of other Ottoman swords in the collection, but they almost all date from the late 18th and 19th centuries. And so now then we have this one really early blade that was put on a European sword hilt with European scabbard and mounts and so forth in the 1540s, and it's just it's a fabulous example of an object that tells you a story. You can imagine some Renaissance Italian gets his whole hands on this exotic, fabulous blade and dresses it up and does his own thing with it.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I mean, it's you can think about weapons practically, but you got to remember that they're also expressive art objects, and they have a lot of other stories and things to tell you, and that applies to their use in film as well. I mean, all of the Predator's weapons are there to tell the story and to flesh out the character. That's what they're doing. They're all pretty impractical as actual tools,
right.
But they're there to tell the story, and it works. It's one of the best examples of that.
Right. Things like, oh, this is a futuristic technology that you're seeing right away when he takes out Blaine, but then mixed, like you were saying before, with the wrist blades, that there's must be some, I don't know, some martial training too, not just projectile weaponry at their disposal. Yeah.
They're kind of inconsistent about their sort of attitude to weapons, but we get into that later. But clearly they have this weird status of being, very advanced technologically, and yet somehow kind of tribal at the same time. I mean, you don't get a whole lot of that in this film. I mean, most of that is later development in Predator 2 and subsequent films. But there's a hint of it. There's a hint that he has a code, because in this film he won't kill people who aren't carrying weapons.
No sport.
And that obviously gets developed more later in the sort of predator chivalry, if you will.
All right. Well, Jeff, do you have something to recommend too?
Yeah, I'll be quick here. We've been having a very intellectual conversation about Predator. I'm going to bring things back down to my level here with this recommend. All the all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies have landed on Shudder. If you are a Shudder subscriber, which is an all horror movie streaming service. Anyone who knows me knows I love horror movies, and my favorite franchise is actually Friday the 13th. But I've been wanting to go back and revisit the Freddy movies just because I haven't seen them very much, and there's some that I've never seen. So I watched part 3 last night, and it was fantastic. I loved it. The practical effects were so good, super fun, quintessential late 80s Nightmare on Elm Street movie, streaming on Shudder in full high restored Blu-ray definition. It is gorgeous. Check it out.
Awesome.
That's my recommend.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. What you got, John?
Well, I was just clicking through the old Netflix the other day, and I came across a movie called MI5, which just happens to have British connections, which is awesome. Didn't mean for that to happen, but it's a nice little taut conspiracy thriller, just following the MI5 director disappearing after a botched job dealing with a terrorist and the terrorist escape, which happens in the first 5 or so minutes of the movie.
Is this a Netflix original?
This is not a Netflix original. It's actually based on a long-running British series called Spooks. I learned later on, and I immediately now want to watch the TV series Spooks because the star performer of MI5 is Peter Firth, playing the escaped MI5 director Harry Pierce, and he's one of the main characters on the TV show Spooks, which ran from 2002 to 2011 for 86 episodes. I did a little bit of research on the actual show too, but I really liked MI5. One of the stars is also Kit Harington from Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, nice.
Jon Snow.
Yep. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
She's right, you don't.
Exactly. I don't know what that means because I'm not a Game of Thrones watcher, but it sounds awesome. I do know he spells his name J-O-N, which is the right way to spell it. But check out MI5. If you see it on Netflix, the first thing you're going to think of, like I did, is this Mission Impossible 5? Because the poster
That's what I thought you were going to say.
The poster for it looks like a curly-haired Tom Cruise, jumping and holding a weapon in the air, and it says MI5 in very stylistic writing. Can't help but think about Mission Impossible, but plays more like a Jason Bourne, or I don't know, some other figure who's trying to figure out his own government conspiracy during the movie. But check that out, MI5 on Netflix today.
Nice.
This is the part of the show where we talk about where we can reach our guests and our co-host and the podcast itself. So, Toby, where can people find you if they want to contact you and talk more medieval or Renaissance armory details?
Yeah, I mean, I'm based at the Wallace collection during the week in London, and I'm on Facebook, and I pop up here and there. I write books and articles as fast as my schedule will allow, and you want to check out what I've written, please do. I've also got a page on academia.edu where I try to put as much of my work on and make it downloadable and accessible as I can. So check that out as well. Yeah. The Wallace collection has a YouTube channel, and I've done a couple of films on there and elsewhere.
And do you still joust?
Oh yeah. There's that as well. Yeah, I'm also involved in Western European martial arts in competition. I helped found the modern historical jousting community about 25 years ago, and I still compete in tournaments in different parts of the world. I've done a couple of jousts this year. I'm not doing any more. I am fighting in a armored longsword tournament in Italy in October, which should be pretty
awesome.
Cool. That's not on horses. That's just on foot. But it's up close and personal. So that should be fun. There'll probably be some kind of web presence for that as it happens.
Do you go by Sir Toby?
No, I try not to. I mean, I sometimes the sort of role playing kind of tends to alienate your audience, and I really try to find ways of getting my audience to empathize with the people in the past that I'm dealing with. You know, it's very easy to kind of think of people living in the Middle Ages or whatever as strange and alien and somehow other, but they're actually just like us. They're remarkably just like us, and we are like them. And so I try to do everything I do as myself, except in certain situations where for a TV program or whatever, we're trying to reconstruct a historical event. But in modern competition, it's you do it as yourself in a modern context.
Okay. I would probably be Sir Crazy Legs, because I've always liked that nickname, Crazy Legs. I'll just dance around the outside of this, or right inside the circle on the edge. It's just default. Oh, sorry, it was another tie. I don't know. Just give it to him. All right, so Jeff, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter, Carl_Hungus 314.
My name is Carl Ishbin Expert.
Jeff Glover's on the Twitter. Come find me there. I posted today about Tetris. It was exciting.
Oh, nice. Are you playing the Tetris 99 on Switch?
Ooh, I have been playing that a little bit, but I also flipped on ESPN today, and they had...
Oh, the Ocho.
Oh, the Ocho had competitive Tetris playing, and it was fucking awesome. And I was...
Oh, yeah. There's pros out there.
Dude, they're so good. They are so good. It's all I want to watch. I just want a channel that's 100% competitive Tetris playing.
I think they have it on Twitch.
Right.
Right. Go check it out. I'm sure you'll find innumerable channels.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. If you want to contact the show out there, yes, you listener, drop us a line, predatorminute@gmail.com. We are also on Twitter @PredatorMinute. We have a Facebook discussion group, so come tell us all about your Knight's Tale or your medieval name or your favorite weapon in modern times or medieval times. Talk about Toby and his expertise. Reach out to him there too. That is on Facebook @Predator Minute Listeners Palapa. And I believe that's it for this minute 51. So for Predator Minute, I've been John Zabriskie.
And I'm Jeff Glover.
And I'm Toby Capwell.
And until next time,
stick around.
Stick around.
Mac.
Mac. Mac. Mac. Mac. Mac.
Mac. Mac. Mac. Mac.
Stick around.
Mac.
Mac. Mac.
Mac. Mac. Mac.
Mac. It's all bullshit.
You set us up.
You set us up. It's all bullshit.
Vámonos.
Hey everybody, this is Heidi
Let off some steam.
Bennett of Vibrant Visionaries podcast and Spinal Tap Minute podcast. And this is a quick little promo for an upcoming event that my co-host Sean and I wanted to tell you about. And it's Movies by Minutes Portland. Welcome to this promo, Sean. How are you doing over there?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
We're going to be meeting up in Portland, Oregon on Saturday, August 24th. For live podcasting, games, and on the stage, we've got the Movies by Minutes guys from Star Wars Minute. Actually, it's going to be a mashup of Star Wars Minute and The Godfather Minute.
Oh, wow. That sounds great.
Yeah, and then we're going to have the newly pod game. Rick from Mad Max Minute is going to be hosting that. Vibrant Visionaries, where I'm going to have the fellas from Open the Podcast Doors, Hal, which I think you could probably figure out which podcast podcast, that is.
Yeah.
And then just added the Cast and the Furious. So lots of live podcasting and some games going on. So I wanted to ask you about the game that you're going to be a part of. Why don't you tell me more about the Cystic Fibrosis Fundraiser Movie Trivia Tournament?
Sure. Yeah. It's a trivia competition between teams of movie podcasters and movie fans answering trivia questions about movies. In Portland on that Saturday will be the final round to name this year's champion. And this is all to raise funds for research into cystic fibrosis. The contestants can get hints from the audience for, I think it'll be $5 or $10 or something like that.
Yeah, so just a little bit more about the event. It is actually the third year we've done this. We started by doing a Movies by Minutes in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we went to
Denver.
This year we're in Portland. Tickets are $20. It's a family-friendly event, and it's really a social event. So we'll have a break for lunch. We'll have beer and wine will be served, and then lots of live podcasting and just opportunities to socialize and hang out with fellow listeners, hang out with other podcasters. If you're a podcaster out there in the Pacific Northwest, we'd love to have you come and, mix, mingle, and swag swap with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's not just for the Movies by Minutes listener, but the podcast listener and fan alike.
It's not a technical conference. If you've ever been to a conference for work where everyone's talking about kind of the behind the scenes stuff and the nitty gritty, there's certainly some of that. There will be experienced podcasters there. So if you're looking to get your own podcast off the ground and you want to talk to some people and get some input, there's that as well. But it's mainly for listeners. Listeners would get the most out of it. See your favorite podcasts live on stage. And also there are a lot of folks that'll be coming in from around the country and around the world. The formal meeting itself that you need to buy a ticket to is just that Saturday, but will be around that whole weekend. I know a lot of the podcasters into board games. So if you're a big board game person, there's going to be informal gatherings of people playing board games. If you're into pinball and arcade games, I've been scouting out arcades in the Portland area, and there's a few that are not too far from the theater. So I'm sure there's going to be some pinball and video game playing going on that weekend as well. So it really is a whole weekend of fun and events for podcasters, for listeners, for folks that just love to talk about movies.
Sweet.
We should tell the fine folks where they can get tickets.
Go to moviesbyminutes.com/Portland. That's moviesbyminutes.com/Portland to buy tickets. Again, tickets are $20.
Listeners, we look forward to seeing you there.
All right. See you in Portland.